20, 21. And we're studying from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, entitled The Most Confidential Knowledge. We're on text 1 in our Bhagavad Gita course. We're studying chapter 9. So this is the first verse of chapter 9. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Tu Te Guyatamam Pravakshami Anasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yat Gyatva Mokshase Ashubhat Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Tute Guyatamam Pravaksham Yanasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yat Gyatva Mokshase Shubhat Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Itam Tute Guyatamam Pravaksham Yanasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yat Gyatva Mokshase Shubhat Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Tute Guyatamam Pravaksham Yanasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yat Gyatva Mokshase Shubhat.
The Supreme Personality of Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Idam Tute Guhayatamam
Idam Tute Guyatamam
Pravaksham Manusaye
Pravaksham Yanasuyave
Jnanam Vishnana Sahatinam
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
Ye Janatva Mokshat
Yat Gyatva Mokshase Shubhat.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Idam Tute Guyatamam
Idam Tute Guyatamam Pravaksham Yanasuyave Jnana Vijnana Sahitam Yat Gyatva Mokshase Shubhat. Would anyone else like to recite the verse online?
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Idam Tute Guyatamam
Idam Tute Guyatamam
Pravakshami Anusuyave
Pravaksham Yanasuyave
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
Rajgyatva Mokshase Shubhat.
Yat Gyatva Mokshase Shubhat.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Tute Guyatamam
Idam Tute Guyatamam
Pravaksham Yanasuyave
Pravaksham Yanasuyave
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
Yagyatva Mokshaya Subhat
Yat Gyatva Mokshase Shubhat.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Tute Guyatamam.
Idam tute guyatamam.
Avaksham Yanusuyave.
Pravaksham yanasuyave.
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam.
Vijnana sahitam.
Yatva Moksha Se Subhat.
Yat yatva mokshase shubhat.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Idam Tute Guyatamam
Idam tute guyatamam.
Pravaksham Yanasuyave
Pravaksham yanasuyave.
Jnana Vijnana Sahitam
Yanam vijnana sahitam.
Yajgyatva Mokshase Shubhat.
Yat yatva mokshase subhat.
Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Idam Tute Guyatamam
Idam tute guyatamam.
Pravakshyam Yanusuyave
Pravaksham yanasuyave.
Nam Vijnana Sahitam
Yanam vijnana sahitam.
Yajgyatva Mokshase Shubhat.
Yat yatva mokshase subhat.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Idam Tute Guyatamam
Idam
Idam tute guyatamam.
Avaksham Yanasuyave
Pravaksham yanasuyave.
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam
Yanam vijnana sahitam.
Yagyadva Mokshaye Shubhat.
Yatva mokshase subhat. Okay, we'll go to the word for word. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha,
Bhagavan Uvacha.
the Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
Supreme Personality of God has good.
Idam, this, to, but, te, unto you, guyatamam, most confidential, prabhakshami, I am speaking, anasuyave, to the non-envious, jnanam, knowledge, vijnana, realized knowledge, sahitam, with, yat, which, yatva, knowing, mokshase, be released, ashubhat, from this miserable material existence. Translation. The Supreme Lord said, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most secret wisdom, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. As the devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened. This hearing process is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Quote, the messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies, and these potencies can be realized if topics regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed amongst devotees. This cannot be achieved by the association of mental speculators or academic scholars, for it is realized knowledge. The devotees are constantly engaged in the Supreme Lord's service. The Lord understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and gives him the intelligence to understand the science of Krishna in the association of the devotees. Discussion of Krishna is very potent, and if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization. Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher and higher elevation in his potent service, describes in this 9th chapter matters more confidential than any he has already disclosed. The very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter, is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book. And in the second and third chapters, the spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. Topics discussed in the 7th and 8th chapters are specifically related to devotional service, and because they bring enlightenment in Krishna consciousness, they're called more confidential. But the matters which are described in the 9th chapter deal with unalloyed pure devotion. Therefore, this is called the most confidential. One who is situated in the most confidential knowledge of Krishna is naturally transcendental. He therefore has no material pangs, although he is in the material world. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is said that although one who has a sincere desire to render loving service to the Supreme Lord is situated in the conditional state of material existence, he is to be considered liberated. Similarly, we shall find in the Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter that anyone who is engaged in that way is a liberated person. Now, this first verse has specific significance. Knowledge, idam jnanam, refers to pure devotional service, which consists of 9 different activities: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshiping, praying, obeying, maintaining friendship, and surrendering everything. By the practice of these 9 elements of devotional service, one is elevated to spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness. At the time when one's heart is cleared of the material contamination, one can understand the science of Krishna. Simply to understand that a living entity is not material is not sufficient. That may be the beginning of spiritual realization, but one should recognize the difference between activities of the body and spiritual activities by which one understands that he is not the body. In the 7th chapter, we have already discussed the opulent potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his different energies, the inferior and superior natures, and all this material manifestation. Now, in chapters 9 and 10, the glories of the Lord will be delineated. The Sanskrit word anasuyave in this verse is also very significant. Generally, the commentators, even if they are highly scholarly, are all envious of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the most erudite scholars write on Bhagavad Gita very inaccurately. Because they are envious of Krishna, their commentaries are useless. The commentaries given by devotees of the Lord are bona fide. No one can explain Bhagavad Gita or give perfect knowledge of Krishna if he is envious. One who criticizes the character of Krishna without knowing him is a fool. So such commentaries should be very carefully avoided. For one who understands that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the pure and transcendental personality, these chapters will be very beneficial. Om Ganatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatayubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Tute Guyatamam Prabhakshamyana Suyave Ganam Vigana Saitam Yajgatva Moksha Se Shubhat. The Supreme Lord said, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most secret wisdom, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. So in those invocation mantras, we said Prabhupada's pranam mantras, one of which is Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Srila Prabhupada came to the West and gave this very personalist philosophy and practice of bhakti yoga. Specifically came to the West, which is filled with impersonalism and voidism, and meaning views of life, philosophies of life, where the conception is, if we really get to the core, if we really get to the essence of everything, we'll find nothing. Or at the substratum of existence is the undifferentiated white light, or at the very foundation, the ground of existence is matter. So Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, here the assertion is, right in this very verse, the very substratum of existence, if we really get to the core of the core of the core, then is actually transcendental personhood. So this verse starts, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. So the Vedanti tat tatvavidas tatvamyaj ganamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. Learned transcendentalists realize the absolute in three dimensions, three aspects. Brahman, the oneness of all energy, Paramatma, God in the heart, and then Bhagavan, Vasudev, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, so this Vasudev, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Vasudev means an all-pervading person. It's hard to conceive with material mind, because our conception of personhood is it's limited. I'm a person, I'm here, I'm not there, like that. So understand this mystery, all-pervading personhood that is the ground of existence. So to unlock the secret of what's that mean, the process is bhakti, the process is devotional service. And so Prabhupada in the purport, he emphasizes this word in the verse, anasuyave, means non-envious, non-envious. And yeah, so sometimes we'll say like, all right, so even when Prabhupada came to the West in the mid-60s, there were already like 600 translations of Bhagavad Gita in English, also many others in German, other languages. And so we can say, well, so why do you read Bhagavad Gita as it is, given by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami? So we can say, well, it's just your prejudice, maybe. Well, in our Safatov community, we're big on transformation. We're big on transformation. And if we just look at historical fact, clearly, Bhagavad Gita has been appreciated since the late 1700s all around the world. The Germans, the British, Americans, like that. But with all those different translations of Bhagavad Gita, people appreciated them intellectually, but they did not create change. They did not create transformation of heart, transformation of life, transformation of habits, hardly at all. Then Prabhupada comes with Bhagavad Gita as it is, and within a few years, it's like millions and millions of lives are completely transformed. It's just historic. That doesn't mean it's better. I mean, we can look at what's better, but it's just historical fact. So it means there's some special potency here. Again, we can say, I like this translation better. We can have our opinions, but just as far as transformation, this is the This is the Bhagavad Gita that has created thousands of times more transformation than the others combined. It's just historical fact. Now, as we have experienced, the process of transformation generally means getting uncomfortable, right? So we say, like, Bhagavad Gita as it is, given by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, it'll be so comfortable. Probably not. Probably not. I know if I'm reading Prabhupada's books and I'm paying attention, it's unsettling. It's unsettling in a growth-inspiring way. That's my experience looking back more than 40 years. So Prabhupada gives kind of the key, like, well, how come this has the potency for transformation? How come? And so most of the other Gitas, the Gita is spoken, well, it's a conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. It's spoken by Krishna, and most of the attempts, and I've read it, well, I've at least looked at a few other versions, read one other version, like they're trying to take Krishna out of the Bhagavad Gita. So there's matsara, envy, jealousy, matsara, and so Prabhupada, he's giving Krishna's words as it is, not maybe as we might prefer them to be, but just this is as it is, with no other agenda. Just here's Krishna's philosophy, and then we can say, I like it, I don't like it, I like this part, and we can process it how we choose. This explains, though, why there's the potency that Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, is giving it as it is. His spiritual master, Gaura Das Babaji, is giving the knowledge as it is. So there's a potency, there's a line, there's no changes. Of course, everyone communicates the philosophy according to our particular realization and personality, but there's no change in the essence, no change in the meaning. In fact, Prabhupada often gives an example from this very chapter. We just read the first verse of this chapter. The last verse of this chapter, Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto Majiji Mam Namaskuru Mame Veshyasa Yuktvevam Atmanam Mat Parayana. So, well, I'll read the exact translation. So Krishna says in that verse, engage your mind always in thinking of me, offer obeisances and worship me, being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So Prabhupada gives the example, one well-known translator of Bhagavad Gita, who was also a top politician in India back 60 years ago or more. So Prabhupada gives the example that in that verse, the commentary by that translator is, so Krishna says, engage your mind always in thinking of me. Be completely absorbed in me. So the commentator says, it is not to Krishna to who we should think of, we should be absorbed in. It is the unborn within Krishna. Then we're supposed to go, the unborn within Krishna. Okay, right, like that's cool. I mean, that's really cool. So what's that mean? What's that mean? No one knows, but it's just like a cool thing to say. So Prabhupada would point that out, like, well, first of all, Prabhupada would often point out, there's no difference between the within and without for Krishna. That's what absolute means, right? The Krishna's body is absolute. And then he says, anyhow, the Krishna saying, engage your mind always in thinking of me. We might not like that, but he's not saying the unborn within me. So that's an example that Prabhupada uses to show how the commentators, they're changing it to suit their own philosophy, which some people might like better, but it's not as it is. So Prabhupada gives many examples like that. So Prabhupada is just giving as it is, and thus there's potency, and as my life goes on, I'm more and more appreciating what that means, that from Prabhupada we get it as it is, and then I get my opportunity in life is to present Prabhupada as it is. And so, okay. So Krishna says to Arjuna in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, So evayamayate de yoga prokta pratana bhaktosi me sakacheti rahasyam yetarutama. Similarly, Krishna says to Arjuna, I'm giving you this Bhagavad Gita. I'm sharing it with you. Why? Was Arjuna the greatest scholar, the greatest Vedic scholar of the time? He wasn't known that way. He was a warrior. He was a fighter. But Krishna says, I'm sharing this knowledge, this rahasyam, this mysterious. Mysterious just means like we don't understand, just like whatever. Let's say if someone from 200 years ago saw a television and the television is playing something, playing a scene where there's a big battle, like this is mysterious from the gods, and it would be, oh my God. But we're like, well, I don't understand. I don't understand. It's the electronics are mysterious to me, but there's, I guess there was transistors and now there's digital. I don't know. So I guess for me, it's still mysterious, but probably less mysterious than people from 200 years ago. So it's mysterious. So Krishna says, I'm sharing with you this this knowledge. Why? Because you're my devotee and you're my friend. You're non-envious of me. Therefore, that you have the heart that's able to understand. Otherwise, someone can have a lot of material intelligence, maya paritagyana, but we won't get it with material intelligence. We need the clean, non-envious heart to get this bhakti yoga philosophy. So, okay. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, at the time when one's heart is cleared of the material contamination, one can understand this science of Krishna. Simply to understand that a living entity is not material is not sufficient. So that's a beginning. That may be the beginning of spiritual realization, but one should recognize the difference between activities of the body and spiritual activities by which one understands that he is not the body. So this is the beginning of confidential knowledge. This chapter is entitled The Most Confidential Knowledge. So the beginning of confidential knowledge. Confidential means we're really getting to what is intimate, okay? And so knowledge about like the body and bodily activities, that's extraneous, that's superfluous. But just like, so in all of our Sattvato programs, right, we focus on confidential knowledge. We focus on creating sacred space, one-on-one, in group, where it's a safe space to share the heart confidentially. Because we know that as long as we're putting on masks and living superfluously and living for survival strategies and looking good and image and approval, all of that stuff, we won't be satisfied. We'll probably be suffering in misery quite a bit. So from the beginning of the foundational through the advanced, through Sattvato 3, coach training, it's all about creating sacred space to support each other, to attain the actual aim of life. What's real? To get more, to peel off the layers and get to the authentic truth. And then it's not comfortable. It's often painful. But then we're really opening the lid to the actual fulfillment of the self. So the word used here is guyatama. We're familiar with the term tamas. Tamas means ignorance, darkness. So uttama, is like ultimate or over. So uttama means transcendental to ignorance, free from ignorance. So guyatamam, guya means the most confidential, that which is most confidential in the heart. So that knowledge, that sharing, which is completely transcendental to any darkness or shadowy stuff. So this is where this knowledge goes. The beginning of that, as Prabhupada describes in the purport, the beginning is understanding I'm not the body. The body is an anartha. Anartha means an unwanted thing. Oftentimes in the Shastra, anarthas are described as like greed, lust, envy, jealousy. And they're all of the anartas, all of the unwanted things, and all the grungies, all the self-defeating tapes like that. They're all based in misidentification of the spiritual self with the material body. Bayam dvitiya biniveshata syat. The root cause of all anxiety, all lamentation, is misidentification of the eternal spiritual self with the temporary body. Because so that anarta means that which is superfluous to the actual reality, to the essence. And so the whole body, gross body and subtle material body, mind, intelligence, ahankara, false ego, it's an anarta. It's superfluous. And we're just not going to be satisfied if that's our focus. Doesn't mean that we neglect the body, but we're not going to be satisfied if taking care of the car is a focus of our life. We need to nourish the driver of the car. So, so the beginning of confidential knowledge, Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam juratata dehantura praptir dirasthatranamuyate. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. Avinasi tutadvidi yena sarvamidam tata vinashama vyasyasya kashtadyudyas bharata. That only the material body will be destroyed. The irreducible quantum of consciousness that inhabits the body, that's indestructible. It's eternal. It's immeasurable, like that. So, okay. So we get beyond superfluous to the actual soul, the actual atomic unit of sentience that animates the body. That's a more confidential understanding. In Srila Rupa Goswami, he describes the quality of relationship between persons dedicated to self-realization. Dadati pratigrinati, guyam akiti prichati. Same word, guyam, just same word is used here, guyatamam. Guyam means, so Rupa Goswami is talking about creating sacred space and relationship where one feels safe to share the heart and mind confidentially and to inquire confidentially. So this is so key. That quality of association is so key if we really want our relationships to support us in that ultimate aim of human life, getting to that which is most essential, Otherwise, our relationships just support anartas. They just support the masks and that which is superfluous to the actual self. And we're just leading each other further into emptiness and numbing the pain of the emptiness. And so, okay, so then there's the soul, and then it's described, Nityasada Krishna Prema Sajikabu Noi Shavanade Shudachitesh Karye Udai. That, okay, then there's the soul of the soul. Prabhupada sometimes said that naturally we love the body. Naturally we love the body. Why do we love the body? Because the spirit soul, because we're inside. If the spirit soul goes away, we don't love the body anymore. Then we want to burn it, bury it, feed it to the worms, give it to the fish, right? But Prabhupada said it's natural to love the body because the soul's inside. And Prabhupada said it's natural to love the soul. It's natural to love the soul because the soul is part and parcel of Krishna, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. And that love of Krishna is eternally situated in the hearts of all living entities. It's not something to be obtained from some external source. And so this love of God, it's the soul of our soul. This gets to the very substratum of existence, the very ground of existence. The Janmadi Yasya Yataha, what exists in the effect, must naturally exist in the source. We've got form, personality, qualities. We like to dance, music. So those qualities must exist in the Supreme, must exist in our source. That's logic. Now, what's the nature of spiritual dancing? What's the nature of spiritual vibration, spiritual sound vibration? What's the nature of spiritual personality? Again, that gets realized to the extent that we give ourselves without envy to the process of bhakti. That's the epistemology to know that transcendent, all-pervading personality who is the soul of our soul, who is the soul of our soul. And that's, the more we peel off layers and get to the essence, beyond the gross body, beyond the subtle material body, to who we actually are. And then Prabhupada talks about, the transcendental activities that that may be the beginning of spiritual realization, but one should recognize the difference between activities of the body and spiritual activities by which one understands that he is not the body. So by analysis, we can understand we're not the body, we're spirit. So by analysis, we can begin to engage in bhakti yoga. And it goes the other way too. Because whatever I understand or don't understand, even I don't understand anything, but I start to peel potatoes to help prepare a prasadam sabji, or I dance in kirtan. This is fun. We engage in bhakti, and that leads to realization that I'm spirit, soul, I'm not the body. I'm not the body. So it goes both ways. We engage in bhakti, and we experience ourselves as transcendental to matter. It's a gradual process for most. Or through analysis, we realize, just like Descartes, I think, therefore I am. He went through a process. He realized he's not the finger. He's something of a completely different category. Okay, so we analyze and we can understand, oh, okay, I'm spirit soul. Oh, okay. The veins of a leaf, the rotation of the planets, so much organization there, much greater, much higher level organization than the computer. Must be a intelligence. How can I get to know that intelligence? Okay, well, this intelligence is greater than me. So with my limited mind, that's going to be limited. So let me engage in a process. That is the process to know someone that's an evolved consciousness. And that's the process of gaining one's love and trust. And then they choose to reveal themselves to me. That's the process to get to know an evolved conscious entity, bhakti. So let me engage in bhakti. So through analysis, if we're sincere, Bahunam Janmanam and Te Gyanavam Prapadinte Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudulabha. If we're sincere, it'll lead to bhakti. All yoga processes lead to bhakti. And at the same time, if we just go right to bhakti, we'll get realization that we're not the body. It goes both ways. And then so then one more part of the verse I'll mention before we close here. A very important part. Yajgatva mokshase subhat. And Krishna says, so I'm imparting to you this most secret wisdom. Now, one thing, secret is an interesting word, because it's like, well, billions of people have read Bhagavad Gita. What's the big secret? But to actually get the secret means we need to follow in the line of Arjuna, be Krishna's devotee, non-envious, and then the secret's revealed. So it's an open secret. And so get this knowledge, really get it, realize that you'll be relieved of the miseries of material existence. So that ought to be captivating information. I was conducting a coaching session yesterday. Young man in his 20s, but he came to realization that he's suffering because his life is very together. His life is very together in so many ways: career, finances, residence, status in society. But he realized that he's suffering, and that was like that's the beginning of humility. That's the beginning of humility, to realize I need guidance to liberate myself from these material miseries. Srila Sanatan Goswami, he was practically the prime minister of the land about 500 years ago. Very wealthy, attractive, intelligent, knew 6 languages fluently. He approached Lord Chaitanya with a straw between his teeth. And he said, Kayami Kaneyamaya Jare Tapatraya. He said, people think I've got it together. People admire me. They think I've got it all. I know, though, that I don't even know who I am. And I'm suffering. I'm suffering so many miseries, so much torment of the mind, miseries coming from disease, cheating. And so please guide me, please instruct me. Similar to Arjuna's approach to Krishna. Again, Arjuna is like the alpha warrior of the age. And in text 7 of chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna approaches Krishna, Karpanya dosha patasva bhava prichamitvam dharma samuda cheta yatreyasyan bruhi nischaya bruhi tanme shishasteham sarimam tram prapanam. Arjuna says, now I've lost my composure due to weakness, and in this condition, now I'm a soul surrendered unto you. Please, now I'm your disciple, please instruct me. So as the purport emphasizes, this process of realizing who we are as not the body, spirit, soul, realizing who we are as Jivara, Srupori, Krishna, and Nityadas, eternal servants of Krishna, starts with hearing from a non-envious source. And that's what we're doing, from Krishna, from Arjuna, from Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada writes, as the devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened. Shrinvatam Svakata Krishna Punyashravana Kirtanam Vidantya Stoya Bhajani Vidunati Saritsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the super soul, Paramatma, in the heart of all living entities, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, personally cleanses the heart from material desire for the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So Krishna wants us to purify our heart more than we do. He's really wanting us to give ourselves to this process, because the impurity in the heart, this is the source of misery, holding on to the greed, envy, lust, arrogance. It's the source of our misery. And so it's a whole process culminating in vidyate vidyagrantish chijante sarvasamshya kshiyante chasya karmani drishta evat manishvari. Thus the knot in the heart is pierced and all misgivings are slashed to pieces. The chain of fruit of activity is terminated when one realizes the self as master. So we got this heart, this knot in the heart, that's the analogy. And that gets pierced and we're free, we're liberated for the actual life of transcendental knowledge, the actual life of the soul, through this process of hearing and chanting Bhagavad Gita and transcendental song. Every verse in Bhagavad Gita, including this one, is a mantra. And of course, the Maha Mantra, as a cornerstone for the process, is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This first verse of the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Tute Guyatamam Prabhaksham Yanasuyave Gyanam Vijnana Sahitam Yadgatva Mokshase Subhad. The Supreme Lord said, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most secret wisdom, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. Thank you for listening. Thanks for your association. Hare Krishna. I welcome at this time if anyone would like to share any comments or ask any questions. Ladini Shakti.
Hey Krishna, I appreciate your class and I find how Krishna wants our heart to be more clear more than we want that. I can for sure relate to that. And like you mentioned, Hare Krishna Charame, you mentioned that like when you read Bhagavad Gita with sincerity, that it's unsettling for you and uncomfortable. And so I'm wondering about it because when I read Bhagavad Gita or anything really from Srila Prabhupada, it feels very comforting. So does it mean that I'm not reading with sincerity?
Yeah. Thank you, Ladini Shakti. Yeah, well, my experience is consistent with yours. That's probably even more than chanting japa. Reading Prabhupada's books is the most comforting part of my life. It's for me, it's the most powerful sadhana. Of course, Prabhupada asks those who are serious about the process of liberation from the cycle of birth and death to chant at least 16 rounds of japa per day. But for me, reading Prabhupada's books, it's the most securing, comforting, it's the most enriching, cleansing, uplifting. Yes. So I guess the resolution of the apparent contradiction is like that okay, like I'm getting truth, and not that I always understand it, but like I experience like not just that every word in Prabhupada's books is revealing truth. Also, each word, each syllable is identical with the truth that it reveals. So even if I'm not cognitively getting it, I experience the transformational potency. I experience the transformational potency, and just like the world, I mean, including my own cheating propensity, the world is just like so full of deception and lies and distortion and politics in the darkest sense of the term, and just business exchange. It's just like, it's so, the world, my even more than when I grew up in the 60s and 70s, not that they were a pure era, but just the world is just more and more so filled with deception and alternate agendas. And so it's so comforting. Pick up Prabhupada's books and I'm getting actual truth that I fully trust. That's comforting. At the same time, the truth can be unsettling for the part of me that wants to hold on to my deception and hold on to my David Wolf God project. Even when I experience it as unsettling, though, it's also comforting and relieving. Like, here's actual truth, not just about the world, but about my heart. So, yeah.
It's relieving not to hold on David Wolf project.
I didn't quite hear that.
You say it's relieving not to hold on David Wolf.
Yeah, exactly. It's relieving. Sure, it can be a little unsettling, but it's less and less unsettling as the decades go on. As the decades go on, like, yes, I'm going to give up the David Wolf, the David Wolf God project. Oh my God, and so it's less and less settling, less and less uncomfortable as the decades go on. So, thanks for sharing.
Like,
Yeah.
I want to share today that when I was in the Serbia airport,
Yeah.
I was really nervous. And then like the verse from Bhagavad Gita came to me that ends with like, you are not entitled to the results of your efforts.
Yeah.
And as soon as I remembered these words, it was like, and I felt so relaxed.
Yeah. Thanks for that practical recent example. You were attached, oh, this has to work, the passport and the vaccinations, I hope they don't check, whatever. But then like you're doing your service and you got that truth from Prabhupada's books, that truth from Krishna. Give our 100% with non-attachment to the result, and you felt comfort, you felt relief, you felt surrender. Wonderful. Thank you, Ladina.
I have a question.
Brielle.
So I've been hearing we're not this body for, I guess, 7 years now.
7 years now, yeah.
And somehow today it's landing in a deeper way than before. But it feels so like sand, like holding water in your hands.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just wondering how to deepen into that, because the only experience I have is that I am this body.
Yeah.
And like for me to shift into some other consciousness usually requires that I have some kind of like image or like a felt sense of something different that I can meditate on and hold on to.
Yeah.
And so the only image I have is Brielle.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Brielle is this body. What do you mean I'm not the body?
Yeah. So I'm like, what image can I hold on to? If like I feel like I need another image other than this character named Brielle. And so I don't like, do I hold on to like a spark of light, or like, I don't know what I can meditate on that will help me disconnect. And also I'm realizing like I'm really attached to being Brielle.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. It's like I don't want to be not Brielle, I want to be Brielle.
Yeah.
And but it feels, I mean, because I am suffering and I realize the cause of my suffering is identifying with Brielle, I'm like, oh, I don't want to identify with that anymore. And life would be so much more simple if I detached from that personality. But like how to actually, like, I know to chant Hare Krishna and do the things I'm already doing, keep doing the program, like that's the answer. But then also I'm like, I feel like I need some other image or something else to hold on to like remember that or something. And then I have another comment, but I'll pause there.
Pause there, okay. Thanks for that. Well, your sharing and question, I think it gets to the essence of this whole process of Krishna consciousness, bhakti yoga. And I know you're familiar with all of the images in Bhagavad Gita, and like Vasamsi Jirnani Ataviha, like changing a set of clothes. This body's a set of clothes. Car, driver in the car, finger owner in the finger, computer, software. You know, you're familiar with all of that. And there's more too. There's so many analogies. So your experience is you are the body, but you've been hearing that. So you have more realization, apart from intellectual conception. You have more realization that you're not the body than you did in 2013. Okay, so be encouraged. Because imagine what your realization will be in the year 2029. No, and I speak from experience, because I've thought about this, well, not as much as I should, but more recently, than in past years. And I can say, I can say I'm basically, my conception of day full, so I'm basically a tongue and a belly. Okay, but no, but I have palpable realization that I'm not the body and that I am spirit soul, palpably more than 20 years ago. What to speak of before I started reading Prabhupada's books 40 years ago, 42 years ago. So I have such little realization. Same time, I have enough to confidently say it works. Like not just, it's an intellectual idea, sort of makes sense. No, I'm experiencing myself as a spirit soul more than I did a decade ago. And the imagery of a spark of light, it's true. It's not just, it's sort of a metaphor because it's not material light, but we are a spiritual spark. And just as the supreme, just as the absolute has three aspects, like the oneness localized in the heart and a transcendental body. So the spirit soul has the diffuse energy throughout the body, has the localized point of light, point of spiritual light, and also then there's the transcendental body.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's it. That can be helpful. That whole true paradigm. And and then so the whole process, and I'll emphasize, following up on Ladini's comment, I'll emphasize the part of the process of reading Prabhupada's books, whether we feel like it or not. And again, you might say Prabhupada emphasizes chant Hare Krishna even more. He emphasizes reading his book so much. For me, it's my most powerful. When I say powerful, I mean transformational, me getting it. Just for me, because when I chant, I'm not trying to minimize chanting Hare Krishna, but just my mind's all over the place. But somehow, when I'm reading, I take 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and I'm reading, and I'm absorbed.
Yeah. And
like it's sinking in more. And it's an austerity. And so Prabhupada, we have someone who's no bodily conception. There's no no misconception that he's the body. He's completely non-envious of Krishna. So his words, so just that regular reading of Prabhupada's books, whether our mind and body feel like it or not, then it's very powerful for steady, palpable, gradual realization that I'm that spirit soul and not the body.
Thank you. Yeah, that feels like reading Prabhupada's books definitely feels like what I want to be doing. So thank you for that. And also when you were sharing, I was getting this sense of understanding more the meaning of, not that I'm like qualified to receive this information, but understanding more the meaning of Swarup, like understanding what our transcendental form is.
Yes.
And in a previous class, you were talking about Sambandha, Avideya, Prayojana.
Yes.
So Avideya is like our relationship with Krishna, right? Like the form of that our relationship takes, like friend or conjugal.
The activity of correct.
Yeah, so I guess that feels like in the direction of what I'm looking for. It's like, what's the form, my true form that I can meditate on? And it's probably won't be revealed to me tomorrow what my actual form is, but I mean, I can maybe meditate on the form that feels most inspiring for me in terms of like which relationship I am inspired to relate to Krishna through. So that feels helpful. And then I wanted to comment on what you said about like, oh, you should be encouraged like this many years.
Yeah.
So just to like kind of playfully push back on that, I spoke with Yadu Prabhu a few weeks ago, and I just was inspired to like ask him like a random question. I don't even remember exactly what I asked, but something that he said was like, and I've heard this from many senior devotees, that they expected they would be way more along in their devotional service by the age that they are now.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it was a little bit like discouraging in a way, because I guess they imagined that they were my age, that by the time that they're their age, they would be like way more advanced.
Yeah, fully realized soul.
Yeah, and they're not, and it's humbling. And something he said, which I don't know how this relates right now, but this phrase like really inspires me. He said, "Purity is the force."
Yeah. It's a Prabhupada quote. Purity is the force.
Purity is the force, and I don't know how this relates to this, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks for sharing.
Do you mind if I share something in relationship to what you said? Two things that came for me. One in relationship to what you said, like from my practice or tradition, it's like certain senses are limited. So like if I see that light bulb, it looks like there's a stable light, that it's permanent. An image feels permanent, but it's flashing constantly. We wouldn't pay an electric bill if it was just a solid light bulb. And same in our body is if I imagine Jeremy and have a picture of myself, there's an identity, there's a solid form there. Sort of, it's hard to imagine, keep it stable for me. So different senses. So Stefan, he was doing the sound vibration, like you're actually from the that you're experiencing that sound as it's changing the vibration of the material form. And same thing here in the body. I'm constantly in touch with sensations of the body, and there's no permanence there. They're fluttering. And I find my mind wants solidity, so it's very challenging to. So even the body in Sabbata, of course, I'll come in very tense, and then as things come, I'll relax, and there'll be more tingling and movement in my body. And so I feel like that's another, or at least where I put my attention, is to the sensations in my body, which are constantly changing, constantly in flux and flow, and there's no permanence and identity there. And that's, I think, in some sense, that's what we're reacting to. That's my desire, my lust, my greed, my hunger is coming from the body. And so like, if I see that, it's like, there's, why be attached to this wave of sensation of pleasant and unpleasant that's coming through?
I appreciate that. I have a steady experience of the experiencer. I'm experiencing this sensation, that thought, that emotion, that feeling. That's all fluctuating. the same time, there is a steady ground, the experiencer, and that can begin to indicate who we're not and who we are. And I appreciate your flickering light example in indicating the fluctuating nature of material forms. Gajendra Prabhu.
Well, it's an interesting conversation, and I don't have I wish I had more question probably than I do realization. There's part of me that looks at it just from sort of the present moment, like it just comes down to devotional service. In this moment, am I feeling harmonious, aligned with Krishna? Am I thinking of Krishna, in Krishna consciousness? Do I feel like I'm serving? Am I having that experience where, like, oh yeah, for me, I'm Krishna conscious at this moment? And I don't know that there can really be anything beyond that. Like, in this moment, if I'm Krishna conscious, then this moment is kind of perfect. And if it's here, on planet Earth in this particular body, it's of course important to, have the understanding that this body is temporary, that it's all changing, similar to what was sort of said a few moments ago, our subtle body, our mind, our material body. So we don't want any attachment to this body. In so many, it's just, first of all, it's just temporary, and it's limited in so many ways to our service. But yet, in a given moment, even right now, we can still have a full sense of Krishna consciousness for us. And to me, that is an eternal key, so to speak.
Yeah.
Wherever we evolve to. And I also want to bring up, like, it's a wondering, like, I don't have, in one sense, I feel my eternal form is more a state of consciousness rather than a particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
By thing, I mean, like, I know that there's ideas like, oh, I have any, this is not my real form, but I have an eternal form, like I'm a blade of grass or I'm a gopi. And somehow I'm like locked into a particular form like that,
Yeah.
that I need to rediscover. And I know that view is held by some people. I don't know. I'm not necessarily sure about that. And even in relation to Srila Prabhupada, I've heard different arguments, like Prabhupada's a gopi, Prabhupada's a cowherd boy. I don't personally look at it like that. I think the state of Krishna consciousness in the nature of the transcendental form, not only for Krishna, but for us, is a little more fluid and tied really into the moment of what's Krishna conscious, what's producing love, what's pleasing Krishna. And it can be evolving, it can be changeable.
Yes.
It's not a declaration I can make because I don't really know. It's what I kind of resonate with in terms of my own understanding. But it does come back to, I think, again, really being present with the moment. And it's like, so I have this body, I know it's a temporary body. It does things like get sick. And in that moment, I have like a choice. I know there's somebody in our community who's been really going through it. But, we have that choice how to take whatever we're experiencing this moment and put it sort of on the absolute platform in relation to Krishna.
Yeah.
And use even the pains, the pleasures, everything of this world in this temporary body, but to relate it to Krishna. And it's within the eternality. I don't know. That's just sort of how it goes for me.
Hmm.
I'm not really looking at this thing far off, like, am I a blade of grass?
Thank you, Gajendra Prabhu. I appreciate your sharing. I resonate. I resonate with your sharing. It works for me. I feel in agreement with it. Like your focus on consciousness, because I resonate personally. Because like whatever the form, I mean, it's about that devotional consciousness. So I get to look now, apart from when I leave this body. 40 years from now or 4 days from now, whenever that will be, but or in 400 trillion years, whatever, but wherever that soul that's called David Wolf now, but yeah, like right now, yeah, what's my am I in devotional consciousness? Am I in a bhakti consciousness? And that consciousness, that's the essence of all the forms. That's the essence of the flute and the blade of grass and all of the forms in Abhideya, in service to Krishna. And for me, it relates to my main primary reference point is Srila Prabhupada, is Srila Prabhupada. That like, because am I serving Krishna? Well, whatever I know about serving Krishna, I know through Srila Prabhupada. And I know that if I'm pleasing Srila Prabhupada, then I'm in that gopi consciousness. I'm in that blade of grass consciousness. So that's like my immediate today, June 25th, 9:20 a.m. consciousness. At least that's what I aspire for. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have another comment. Yeah, I appreciate your sharing, Gajendra, because while you were sharing, actually the other comment I was going to make was that it seems like the only way to realize we're not the body is to first like self-actualize this personality, like in this, like in this lifetime, like. And I think of how, for me, meditating on being like a gopi or blade of grass, it's like a transcendental, you could say like masculine approach, like going up in heaven. And but then really it seems with my own life experience and my studies of depth psychology, like the way out is through.
Yeah.
And so the feminine approach is like being this body, being this personality, and like from that, like fully being this incarnation of Brielle, then I can like, that's the platform through which I can start to detach and like have God. It just seems like I was thinking how this is kind of like, everything spiritual seems to be like a fractal, or everything that we're experiencing materially seems to be a fractal of the spiritual. So like intimacy can only really happen if I'm like fully being myself.
Yeah.
With another human. Like if I'm not fully being who I am, then no intimacy can really happen. So it seems like to apply that spiritually, like, okay, me being who I really am as a spirit soul, but then I'm in this body, so it seems the pathway there is to be fully who I am as Brielle, serving Srila Prabhupada as Brielle. Like it seems that's the the gopi blade of grass thing feels really far away, but maybe I can hold the vision of me being the devotee in like a devotee of the devotee. How do I want to say this? Like being Bhakti and Brielle. There you go.
Being Bhakti.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we lack what I understand you're talking about, then we do that proverbial spiritual bypass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like your car has a bumper sticker. I noticed it. We're Tehar Deshardhan, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. So the most important thing is we're spiritual beings, but the physical experience is very important. Just like we're not the car, we're the driver. So the car is not important. No, the car is important. I want to know, am I in an 18-wheeler? Am I in a moped? Am I in a mini compact? Am I in a luxury sedan? How does this gas pedal and brake? I want to know the car. It's important to know the car because this is the car for my journey. So that, it's very, your whole comment is very sophatov. That's what I said. Because it's so much about, cultivating awareness of myself as the experiencer, and cultivating. And here's my experience of sensation and feeling and psychophysical nature. And this is my car. And if I ignore it, then I'm not going to make spiritual advancement, because I'm starting my spiritual transcendence with ignorance. Not a very good platform. So we start with consciousness, conscious living. Here's my psychophysical. Let me use that in a healthy, productive way. And then gradually, I naturally understand who I am as the transcendental being.
It just seems like hard to maintain both. That's like, okay, I'm Bhakti Brielle and I'm not Brielle at the same time. It's like, I don't know, it just seems hard. Seems like, in a sense, like while we're saying by me being this full incarnation is the pathway to transcendence, still it also feels like it can get muddled and it can just keep me in this Brielle body consciousness.
It can be like I think Anandini wrote, "Thank you. I wish you all a wonderful day." Not to say, it can be like a fine line, razor's edge. It's like it's on the edge. Yeah, that it's that because we can get so into it. Just let's not do a bypass, but then we can just get absorbed in taking care of the body, called David or called Brielle. We get, because I don't want to do a bypass like that, and we just get absorbed in that. That's not fulfilling. And at the same time, we do want to be conscious of our physical experience and mental experience and emotional and intellectual experience, and use all parts of that, in this incarnation. And so that's why it's like it's that, spiritual life is a razor's edge, that we're not indulging in the material experience, and at the same time, neither are we neglecting it, that we're utilizing. Malini?
I think the balance there is what, when Srila Prabhupada really emphasized identification. Like when I say I'm not this body, it's kind of very elusive.
Yeah.
Even more so when, like recently I was in hellish pain and all that, and I was thinking, I don't feel like I'm not this body. I'm really truly this body, no doubt. But then the teaching is really to understand about identification, like, connected with what Jamie was saying. Like, let's say I can have thoughts and I can identify it with my thought or not. But the thoughts are Brielle's thought or Malini's thought. My desire are there. I have desire, and I can identify it with my desire or not. And that's where is the balance and distinction is with, okay, I can accept that, in pain, I feel like, I am my body. And in that, in a sense, there is already a layer of non-identification.
Yep.
In just that thought.
Yes.
So I like that's what's helpful for me to like, okay, this is there, and then the teaching is really endeavoring to not identify with it, while also fully understanding it and acknowledging it and owning it. And,
Yeah.
And another aspect is aspect of karma.
Yeah.
If we understand that this present incarnation of Mary Glashin, Malini Devi Dasi, it's just a combination of desire and activities from previous life. I think that also helps detach from, like take a bird's eye, like, okay, I'm reacting like that to that, or I have this kind of behavior, and I have this kind of propensity, and I have this kind of shortcoming too. I'm not identifying with them, not needing to make them good or bad. They're not good or bad anyway. They are just the vehicle, like a Muppet is not good or bad, it's just a Muppet. Yeah, like that. So that's two things I wanted to add.
Thank you, Melanie. Very moving sharing. Your sharing affirms something I emphasized earlier. The point about reading Prabhupada's books carefully because like Molly, you're sharing, she picked up when Prabhupada used that language, don't identify, right? Like he's not always saying, realize that you're not, but I mean, that might come. But like, even if like, yeah, well, I'm experiencing in my body, but at least we have some conception. I'm not identifying. So that, yeah, I appreciate your sharing, Molly, all parts of it. Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you all. Thanks for your association. Hare Krishna.